Masal khair. Right now I want to talk with you about a special category of nouns that takes special modified case endings in formal Arabic, what we refer to in Arabic as mamnu'a min as-sarf. Sometimes we call these diptotes in English. If you've studied Latin or Greek and that term means something to you, then wonderful. If not, just go ahead and think of it in Arabic as mamnu'a min as-sarf. In this video, I'm assuming that you have a decent grasp of how case endings work regularly in formal Arabic, and if not, we have other videos that we can go back and watch if you feel you're in need of a refresher. There are several diverse categories of nouns that fall into this set that is mamnu' min as-sarf. One of those categories is many, really, plural patterns, broken plural patterns, jam'at taksir. For example, mafa'il, that plural for place names, fawa'il, fu'ala. There are others. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. But that's just a taste. You can go look up a complete list. They're available many places online. Another is af'al at-tafdil, that superlative adjective that we can construct from a lot of other adjectives. So you're talking about something that's biggest or best or strangest, akbar, ahsan, aghrab, that's going to fall into this category. A third major category is names, proper nouns, we might say. All feminine names fall into this category, so Karima, Samira, Latifa, etc. All place names with a couple of exceptions. Anything that starts with an L, like El-Urdun, or anything that ends with the feminine plural ending at, like Al-Imarat, the Emirates, those are not going to fall into this category. And many masculine names except for those that are also regular adjectives, things like Hakim, which means wise but is also a man's name, or Farid, which is a man's name that means unique. Those are not going to fall into this category, but names like Ibrahim, Adam, Nuh, that aren't adjectives and that are often from other languages originally, those are going to be in this pattern. Now you might be thinking to yourself, gee, this is a very random, disparate collection of nouns that are suddenly falling into this exceptional category, and you may have a point. However, the important thing to remember is that as an advanced learner of Arabic, it's unlikely, unless you're composing your own poetry in classical Arabic meters, or unless you're preparing a speech or a sermon that's going to be read aloud in a very formal context, it's unlikely that you're going to need to apply these rules every day in your own personal production of Arabic for communicative purposes. But the important thing as advanced learners is that when we encounter a fully vocalized text with these exceptions, that we don't allow it to trip up our understanding. And as you'll see, the exception, such as it is very, very slight. It's the sort of thing that your eye might cross over without even noticing. When any of these nouns in any of these categories is definite, with alif lam, for example, or with a subject pronoun, or when it's part of a definite idafa, it functions exactly as you might expect in terms of case endings. There are no changes that we need to worry about. When it's indefinite, a couple of small changes occur. First of all, an indefinite noun in one of these categories is never going to take tanween, right? That un or an or in ending that we come to expect on an indefinite noun in a fully vocalized text. It's only going to take a dhamma or a fatha. And the other thing is that when it's marfu'a, the subject of a nominal sentence or the subject of a verb, it will take a dhamma, but if it's mansub or majroor, it's going to take a fatha, that sound. It will never take a kasra. Again, very subtle distinctions, but we need to be able to recognize them when we spot them in the wild. So let's take a look at a couple of examples here. If we wanted to say, we work in a lot of areas or a lot of regions. نعمل في مناطق كثيرة. In a normal text, we wouldn't even see the vocalizations to worry about them. But مناطق is a broken plural that falls into this category. It's in the mafa'il pattern. So I need to start thinking, if I'm going to read this text aloud with all of its case endings, I have a fi here, which means it's majroor. So I might be tempted to give it that in ending. That would be normal. But because it's in this special category, mamnu' min as-sarf, I'm just going to give it one fatha. And then the adjective kathira takes normal i'rab. So I'm going to say manatiqa kathiratin. Another example. Wulida fi Masr. He was born in Egypt. Now, that's a place name, Masr. And it doesn't have alif lam, and it doesn't have a feminine ending at. So, again, I have this preposition, this harf jar, fi. But I'm going to need to add a fatha there instead of kasra tanween in order to comply with this rule, with this exception. Another example, كانت أختي طويلة لكني أصبحت أطول منها. Here we have أطول, and it's the object, the khabar of the verb أصبح. So ordinarily, since it doesn't have an alif lam, I might be tempted to give it tanween, but because it falls in this category, I'm just going to add one fatha. أصبحت أطول منها. Finally, remember again that if any of these nouns in these categories are definite, they take normal case endings, normal i'rab. So in this sentence, for example, جلسوا مع زملائهم في المقاعد الكبيرة. زملاء also falls into this plural pattern, but because it's definite with that pronoun suffix, it's going to take its regular case endings. So we have the preposition ma'a, so I'm just going to add the kasra here, مع زملائهم. في المقاعد, in the chairs, مقاعد, just like مناطق, falls into one of these broken plural categories, but because it's definite, I can go ahead and apply normal case endings. في المقاعد الكبيرة. Once again, as learners of Arabic at this stage, our primary goal is to recognize this exception going on when we see it and to not let it throw us for a loop. But if you ever have the opportunity to work on speechifying in a formal context, this is a great way of demonstrating your proficiency in the language and adding a little bit of rhetorical elegance to your speech.